Hello. Welcome once again to Off the Shelf Books on Tour. We have a returning author, a man of great accomplishment, and we're going to go back over his history for novice writers who, like Paul, believed in himself instead of what other people said. He is the author of the original Monster books, which he wrote in Danvers.
Correct.
And he came to see us as we launched the book, and he went on to bigger and wonderfuler things. Thank you for coming back with your new book.
Excellent.
Thank you. The book Tree.
Thank you for having me. I love being here.
Yeah. Now you don't in Danvers anymore. You ran away.
We did. My wife made me move to New Jersey.
Poor baby. You look abused. But you did get a very lucrative contract to start off with.
Yes.
And that's a blessing in this world. We celebrate your luck.
Yes.
Time and time again.
It was
now,
nice.
Is this the original publisher?
No, this is a new publisher.
Okay.
The Monster books are still all done through Mighty Media.
Okay.
This is Barefoot Books, and they're out of Massachusetts, actually.
And they're very environmentally aware.
Oh, yes.
And they make sure that they cut down only the trees that should go into books and not. But that's important,
Sure.
and it's important to the children that they know that it's not all talk.
Right.
We put our money where our mouth is.
Right. Now they're a great. They're a small publisher, but they're very involved, which is nice.
Now, do you still get excited? This is how many books now?
This will be the 8th book. This will be the 8th. Technically the 7th. The 8th one is coming out in the summer, so 8 are sold.
Okay, and how many years? When did Monster come out, the first one?
Oh, geez. What was that, 2012, I think?
So that's in 5 years,
About
8 books.
Yeah. I think
Congratulations,
Thank you.
young man, and may many follow your footsteps. So I'm so glad you believed in yourself. But you say your inspiration came from your children.
They did, absolutely.
Well, they always say write about what you know.
Exactly, and it comes from listening too, listening to your kids and recognizing, what they're saying
And watching what they pick up for a book.
Exactly.
I've said it time and again. Everybody who's walking around with J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter, and those are big books. I didn't have that much time. But that mattered so.
See, I like big books because that means I don't have to buy 2. I just read the one.
I didn't have the time. I have 5 kids. But it gave me an identity with the kids.
Right.
And I can put on a cape and a pointed hat and become Professor McGonagall in a moment's notice.
Sure.
And control a room full of hairy teenagers. No problem.
Yeah.
Now, this book, what inspired you to do this one?
This was so I actually wrote this about 4 years ago. The first draft was written about 4 years ago, so it took a long time to actually get published. And it happened when I was at the Danvers Library. Actually, I was doing a signing, and it was one of my first. So nobody came because
We'd have been there if
nobody
we knew
nobody
it.
knew who I was, so, which is fine. I expect stuff like that. But as I was walking around the library, I just happened to see a book that had an embossed or picture of a tree. It was like raised. But that was the only thing on the cover. And when I saw it, I'm just like, book tree. I mean, that's the first thing that hit me. And when I got home, I was just like, I want to write a book about a tree that grows books. I didn't know how to get there at the time, but I knew that's what I wanted to write about.
What child hasn't planted a lollipop and hoped a lollipop tree would grow?
Of course. Yep.
Or a bubble gum tree.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
So it's most enjoyable, but it also tells a story. Now, are the kids old enough to read them and say, listen, this isn't how it goes?
You mean my kids? Yes, but they don't tell me that. They just say, Dad, stop reading me your stories.
They're too old?
They're too old now, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. You're never too old.
I agree.
You can always learn something new.
Sure.
Now, how's the sales going?
It's only been out for about a month, so I'm not really sure yet. I haven't gotten any numbers back yet. That's all behind the scenes that I don't get to see. So.
Do you still get excited when it arrives and you open the box and there it is?
Every time. I get excited when the F&G, the editor's proof that I get to look at before it goes out. I get excited with that, let alone a box of books. Oh, yeah.
Do you have a room for all of them hanging?
I have an office that has all those books in there. They're not hung yet. My wife keeps
start
yelling
out
at
in
me.
an office? Book writing?
I write wherever. I mean, I have an office, but I wouldn't say that's where I do everything. I mean,
Notes come to you as you're driving down the highway?
oh, sure, yeah. I still do most of my writing on my iPad, just because I can have
Pick
it
it
right
up and
there
go.
and just go, yeah.
I can't even send a text. They bought me a Kindle so I could read. I did 7 books in one night and I didn't retain a single thing.
I don't like reading on a
No.
Kindle. I don't like reading on it.
It does nothing.
I've tried,
for me.
don't
Nope.
like it.
No,
I want the hard
I
copy.
like the book. I like the texture.
Yeah.
I like the feel.
Exactly. This will never break if I drop it.
No, and I did. I crunched my corner and I felt terrible.
I'll get you a new one.
Why? You know somebody? And what's the next book? It's in the works.
So the next book, well, actually, I have 2 books coming out. So Monster Needs to Go to School should be coming out next summer.
Oh, so it'd be ready for September.
Exactly. And then in spring of 2020, it'll be Trees Make Perfect Pets, which is about a little girl who, it's her birthday, and she wishes for a pet for her birthday, but she wants a tree and not your typical animal, and she treats it as a pet.
To each his own. When someone we love passes away across the country and we can't be there, we can't get there, we plant a tree on our property in their name. And every little tree is special, and I suppose we treat it like a pet. We make sure it's okay through the winter.
Sure. Well, she of course adopts a dogwood, and she names it Fido. So I mean, there's a lot of humor in there too. So.
Good enough. Good enough. Do you find you get more ideas? Do you ever get overloaded with ideas?
I have. So there are ideas, and then there are stories, because an idea does not make a story.
Okay.
So I've gotten many ideas which just never turn into a story. So yes, I mean, do you get overloaded? Not really, because if it doesn't turn into a story, then it just kind of goes by the wayside.
Just hits the trash barrel.
Yeah.
Now, what is your proudest book? Which is the one you enjoy the
this
most?
one.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I love Monster, don't get me wrong. But I've been working on this one for over 4 years. And I wanted it out there because I just love the message that's in the book.
And where does it go from here? A tree for a dog?
It's funny because those 2 stories were written years apart, but they both sold within a month apart. It's weird how that happens.
So you lead a charmed life. You don't know it. We had Bill Martin here a couple of weeks ago, and he wrote a screenplay in college, and it got him nowhere.
Okay.
And it's the genesis for the last book that he just
There
wrote
you go.
that we were previewing and was making it onto the New York Sellers Best List.
There you go.
Again. So, it's worth doing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you enjoy traveling around book clubs, libraries, or do you find that tedious?
Tedious?
Him.
No, I enjoy going out and meeting the people who want to read my books. I mean, that's, you get
The
jazzed up
parents
by
are
that.
more fun or the kids?
I'm sorry?
The parents more fun or the kids?
It depends. Sometimes it really does. I mean, sometimes the kids, you can see the kid that really likes your book because they're too nervous to come up to you and they're sitting there with their book like this, and they're pointing. And then there's the parent who's like, come on, this is the author. Don't you want to meet the author? And the kids are like, whatever.
Yeah.
Just read me the book, Mom.
We had a beautiful experience. They often have interns come in, and this young man came in just as we started to do an interview. And in the course of the interview, he found out he was his favorite author.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And the kid was so excited. So at the end, the author says, Veronica, would you like me to sign the book for you? And I said, no, I think you better sign it for him. And he was so happy that he had the book before all of his friends who read the same thing.
Oh, that's funny.
Now, Monster series went into a lot of schools.
It did. Target had a lot to do with that. Monster Needs a Costume was in Target for a while, so that got a lot of foot traffic, I guess.
And Monster Needs to Vote.
Monster Needs to Vote actually did really well in this past election cycle, which is nice to see.
But again, you applaud your children.
I do. They gave me all the ideas, so I might be biased, but they're just brilliant children.
Now, when you finish, do you keep it all together and then hand it to your wife, or page by page?
No, it's the complete thing. Like, if I ask her to read it, it's got to be complete, because she doesn't want to read a part of a story. I used to do that when I'm like, what do you think of this line? What do you think of that line? And I could tell I was annoying her.
Having reached the success that you have, and congratulations, would you have done anything different?
You know, you make the typical mistakes as any early writer does. So
whether it's 20 or 30, it doesn't matter.
When you first start, you write your story, and you don't know what you're doing, and you immediately go online, you find a publisher, and you send it out there. And that is the worst thing you could possibly do. And so that's something I would change, you know, give myself a little bit more time.
Falling on your face, it hurts when you hit the brick wall.
You know, you need to do your research, and you need to get eyes on your manuscript, and you need to learn about the publishing world before you even attempt to send a manuscript out.
The one thing that amazes me sitting here is when you name a book, does anybody ever look it up to see how many other books have named?
I do. When I get an idea, I immediately go on Amazon and try and find, and I'll do a Google search, and I'll look for the title, I'll look for if there's anything even remotely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
because I'll go to research a book, and there'll be 17 books by the same title.
Oh, yeah. I wrote a story, I must have written it in 10 minutes, honestly. And I was laughing the entire time I was writing it. I'm like, this is brilliant. This is absolutely going to be a book. Wrote the whole thing down, sent it to my critique group. I didn't bother looking it up because I was just like, this is brilliant. Sent it to my critique group, and the first critique came back and said, you know this was already written. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they said, you need to go and look up a book. It's called Zombie in Love. And I immediately went online and looked at it and just like, oh, come on. And it was basically the same story.
Wow.
Yeah. So it happens.
It does. We had a young lady here with a book, and I went home, and I turned on the TV while I was making lunch or something, and here was a detective show on television, the exact same storyline.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you would check that.
Right, I don't know. No idea.
But I don't think the book had been out that long, and I don't think she had seen the television.
Well, that happens too. I mean, when I first wrote, the very first monster story that I wrote was My Monster Needs a Haircut. That was the original story. And when my publisher bought it, they decided to put out Monster Needs a Costume because 2 other books about monsters needing haircuts came out the time when they wanted to publish the haircut story. They're just like, well, we don't want to compete.
No,
So-
and it not only compete, but it's confusing.
Right. So that happens as well. Like, just that's what publishers are looking for, things like that, and so they sell.
Good. But that's why we always put the book here.
Good.
Because most people are looking for the book. And if they were to go where I go looking for the title, here we are again, you know. Do you have a hand in the book cover?
Not at all. I have no say in the illustrations. You know?
Your life has been turned over to the publisher.
Oh, absolutely. But you know, with this story, I was really, obviously when I wrote it, this is not the illustrations that were in my head. I mean, this is very unique, the way she did it. You know, she used a lot of multimedia in this. There's collage. There's literally pieces of gears as wheels and
But
feathers.
that's what today's children, that's how their brains
They
work.
love it. And it gave it a whimsical feel to the story, the way she did the illustrations. And it's a heavy message. I mean,
It's a serious story.
You know, yeah, it's about
Saving
I can't think of the word. Why can't I think of the word?
Well, because you're sitting here with me. But when computers first came in, I was afraid that our children would stop reading.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to a store to get a guide to how to operate the damn machine.
Right.
And there were more books that came out on computer literacy
Sure.
than there were computers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's given unpublished authors an opportunity that they never would have had. You and I didn't have way back when.
Right.
And I just think it's opened up a whole world, but it also, they're not writing cursive in school anymore.
No, they're not. You don't sign your name anymore. It's all password.
But Paul, when you do research and you go to an Old English page,
People aren't going to be able to read it.
they're already not
Mm-hmm.
able to read it.
Right.
The grandchildren hear me their birthday cards and say, Nana, who gave this to me? And I think that's sad.
Yeah, yeah.
And I that one I will never agree with. And penmanship is out
Sure.
altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to learn...
Which, I don't agree with that too, because there's, at the very least, there's eye-hand coordination that you're working on at a very young age. You don't want to lose that.
And when the power goes out...
Right. Or you drop your Kindle.
You know, 2 steps forward and 14 steps backwards,
Yeah.
I think, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do your kids want to do? Do they want to go into the publishing world?
Right now, my son is very interested in science, so he's going that route. But I mean, he's 13. And my daughter she's actually really good at drawing. I mean, she is far better than I could ever be already. I mean, she's really, really good. So hopefully she sticks with that. Whether she does it as a career, but hopefully she just always creates, keeps drawing.
So what did you want to be when you grow up and you were 13?
I probably wanted something to do with the ocean, like oceanography or probably a vet, something like that.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So how did you wind up being a chemist?
Those other 2 things were very hard.
But that's where the next wave is coming from.
Yes.
Our food, our energy, and
Absolutely.
it certainly...
Well, I did go into environmental science.
Oh, all right
Yeah.
then. And,
So,
that's
and
why
then
you
it led to chemistry.
So that's why you went to Marist.
Exactly.
Were you in charge of the greenhouse?
No, we didn't actually have a greenhouse.
There was one there when my babe was there.
It probably is now. It's really changed. I mean, the growth that's happened to that college is amazing. So.
And then my atheist daughter, who's a scientist, I said, Tilly, did you see how many turn callers there are here? And she said, Mommy, they'll get used to me. You know, are you starting to look for colleges and stuff for your 13-year-old?
No, not yet. In Jersey, they actually have these high schools. It's almost like a vocational. But it's specific for either science.
What we call a prep school?
Well, we would call it prep school. And so we were looking at those.
Did they take an off year after graduation, or they go to that for high school?
That would be high school. That would be high school, and then But if you're really into a specific thing, like biotech, you could go to a biotech high school.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
They're ahead of Massachusetts.
Yes, and yes and no. I mean, I think there's positives and negatives to that. I mean, does a 13-year-old really know exactly what they want? I mean, you could easily jump into a biotech high school and within the first year be like,
yeah,
no,
well,
no.
A lot of people have a degree in one thing, and they're journalists.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
So we are now going to end for a moment. You can catch your breath and have a drink of water if you need, and then you're going to read to us.
Excellent.
And none of us are going to fall asleep while you read. Be back in a minute.
The Book Tree. Nestled in the branches of a tree, Arlo opened his book and breathed in. Beginnings were always the best part. They smelled as if anything were possible. Bonk. I'm sorry, Mayor. I got lost in my book and it slipped. Preposterous. Books are dangerous. I don't trust them. They act like seeds, which grow into ideas, and ideas turn into questions. I will tell you what you need to know. First, the mayor gathered every book in the library, and then every book in the whole town. Then he tore them up until all that was left was a single page that floated away in a passing breeze. Arlo chased the page as it blew across town. It reminded him of a dandelion seed drifting on a wish. When it landed, the muddy earth swallowed it, letter by letter, until it too was gone. Arlo thought that perhaps the mayor was right. After all, he'd been elected mayor. He must know something. But without books, Arlo noticed changes wherever he looked. At school, teachers had nothing to read, so story time became nap time. Without cookbooks, restaurants served only dry cereal. No one went to the theater since actors had nothing to act out. And in the place Arlo loved most, all the shelves were empty. Arlo sat where the last page was buried. He missed the crack and creak of a book's spine the first time he opened it. He longed for the smell and the crisp texture of a book's pages. But most of all, he missed getting lost in an epic adventure. Sadly, Arlo scratched 2 words into the dirt. Endings were the worst part of any book. But as he stared at the words, they grew into an idea. Arlo sat with pencil and paper and let his ideas flow. He read his stories out loud to anyone who passed by, but no one stopped to listen. Then Arlo heard something, a sound he thought he'd never hear again, that familiar crack and creak. When Arlo looked for the source of the sound, he saw a sprout springing from the page that the page had been buried. It began to open its leaves. It reached for Arlo's words, begging for more. With every story Arlo wrote and read aloud, the sprout grew. Arlo wrote a story about a giant, and the tree grew tall, reaching for the clouds. He wrote about a fire-breathing beast, and its branches became as strong as dragons' claws. He wrote about a magical swan made of paper, and blooms of tissue paper blossomed into books. When the books were ripe, Arlo climbed into the branches of the book tree and breathed deeply, enjoying the fruits of his harvest. While Arlo read, a friend stopped under the tree. "I'm bored, there's nothing to do." "You could try reading," Arlo said. "Is that a book?" "Yep, here, I love this story," Arlo said, giving her a hand into the tree. The two shared the shady spot. Soon flocks of readers roosted on the limbs. Books spread through the town like pollen in the wind. People grew hungry for reading again. Some wrote their own stories and became book gardeners themselves. Fiery maples bloomed with picture books. Willows wept with poetry, and fruit trees filled with cookbooks flourished. As the trees grew, the town blossomed. The mayor, lost in his mayoral work, was oblivious to all the changes. That is, until a ripe book fell on his head. Bonk! The mayor kicked and stomped. "Who planted these trees?" "You did, sir," Arlo said. "When you tore up the books, it planted an idea." "Impossible! This is the second time my head is hurting because of a book. The trees have to be cut down." "But we've become a town of books and stories. You can't cut them down." The mayor walked the streets of the town. He gorged himself at one of the 5-star restaurants, caught a show in the park, and lost himself in a story about a boy fishing for a whale in a puddle. "Books did all of this?" the mayor asked, astonished. "No," Arlo said, as he handed the mayor a freshly picked story. "The book was just the seed." That's the book tree.
Very well written.
Thank you.
Very well read. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll send it to our dear friend Dana for her daughters.
Absolutely.
Yes, and this will go to her as well.
Good, good.
And when the next book comes out, would you please come back?
Absolutely. Of course.
And I told you when in the beginning, when you got to be where you are today, it would be hard to get you come back, and you promised.
I keep a promise.
Yes, you do. And you write very well. Thank you
very
for
much.
believing in yourself and believing that this will matter to our children, this generation.
I hope so.
Is important.
Yes.
That's it for Off the Shelf. Books on Tour. You can find this book at most bookstores.
Wherever books are sold.
And online at Amazon.
Correct.
Yes. And now say your full name so I don't mess up the last name.
Paul Czajak.
There you go. Bye now.